This piece of tile was the first cut I made when I started laying this floor, and it was supposed to go right here in this corner. Obviously, I missed it. And this is another cut I made, and I'm not exactly sure where it was supposed to go. But this is the kind of thing you get into when you begin making cuts for a floor that's laid on a diagonal, as well as, in this case, on a stacked brick pattern. So I'll show you in this video how we got this one done. Anytime you begin laying out a new floor, there's always some experimentation that goes on as you try to figure out what's going to be the best pattern that gives you the most manageable cuts. If I were laying out this parallel with the front of the tub, I would try to set it up so that I had a full cut against the front of the tub. Or another way I would look at it, I would place a full tile dead center in the room and see how cuts worked out against the left and right sides of the floor. But since that's not the case, and I'm laying it out on a diagonal with a stacked brick pattern, really all bets are off because the tile placement is going to be so random on each row, you really don't have to worry that much about how cuts turn out. They're going to be just what they're going to be. But you do want to look closely at areas like the doorway going through into the toilet room, because depending on how the layout turns out in this area, you can end up with some impossible cuts, or you have to split a tile to make it go around the door jamb. So in this case, I'm actually determining the whole layout for the entire floor based on how the tile passes through the doorway, and placing a full tile right in the center of the doorway gives me the most manageable cuts over any other layout. I always start with some kind of reference lines, or if I'm laying out a more square pattern, I will create grids that I use to keep my alignment as I'm setting tile. Here I drew a line parallel to the tub front and then pulled off at a 45-degree angle to create my lines for this layout. In this case, 18 inches exactly between the lines will allow the grout joints to be centered over my pencil lines. You may have to measure the tile or lay out several pieces at a time to get a true dimension that will be helpful for creating a grid or laying out lines. But if you're going to go to all this trouble, you may as well make sure they're going to line up with your grout joints. Now, if you're wondering if this is really a difficult cut to make, no, it's really not. The only challenge I'm running into is trying to make the cut so that the tile slides under the trim and the edge of the cut cannot be seen. The door jamb and trim have already been cut for the previous installation of the tile, so the tile slides under the trim and the jamb. The goal of the cut is to remove enough material away to allow the tile to slide in place and be up under the trim maybe 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch, just so that the edge of the tile cannot be seen. The cut itself is just a few straight cuts and then trying to make sure you trim up in the right places to get the piece of tile to fit. I did have to make a second try at it because I cut a little too deep into the tile around the door jamb. I was able to use the messed up cut as a template on the new piece of tile and then tried not to make the same mistake again the second go around. But getting this multi-angled cut out of the way helped make the rest of the cuts a little simpler. As the end of the day approached, I wanted to get at least a couple of rows of tiles set before I left so that the next day when I came back I'd be able to work on top of these rows of tile. So by getting far enough into the toilet room to allow me to work on top of that tile the following day, then I could spend some time getting the rest of these diagonal wall cuts made at one time. So I worked on getting these 2 rows of tiles extended all the way from the tub into the toilet area and held off on going any further until the next day. I spent the following morning knocking out the major part of the cuts for the rest of the job. Every cut is a diagonal cut all the way around the toilet room and back into the main bathroom, as well as against the carpet into the closet. There's definitely more work involved in making all these diagonal cuts, but it really does create a pretty interesting effect. That is quite a contrast to tile that is run straight and square with a major wall in the bathroom, which in this case would have been the front edge of the tub. The process gets pretty straightforward now as I'm filling in each row of tile until I work my way out of the doorway. I'm making a mark in the center of a tile on the previous row that gives me a reference point on where to set the corner of my first piece of tile on the next row. It doesn't have to be exact with the stacked brick pattern. I try to maintain about 1/8 of an inch grout joint. It varies some because the size of the tile is not always exact, and between different boxes you'll sometimes find slight variations in overall size. So you just need to be aware of that and adjust your grout joints and lines as needed to accommodate that. Let me address one comment I get on occasions where people will ask about directional troweling, which is what you see me doing here. All that means is that once I've spread enough thinset on the floor for a piece of tile, I make a finishing pass in one direction, which means I'm creating grooves that run parallel to each other across the length of the tile. This is something that is not a big deal to me, but it is to some installers. The idea behind directional troweling is that these parallel grooves in your thin set leave a path for air to escape and not get tracked in a swirl pattern that may have been left in the thin set if you did not finish off the troweling in one direction. Since I back butter the back of my tile before I set it, in addition to the directional troweling, I'm ensuring full coverage of the tile with thin set as well as the floor underneath. As I said, this is something that's not that big of a deal to me, but I have to admit that putting down thin set in this way, I do hear air escaping as I'm pressing the tile into place, which is a good thing. If you have air pockets left under the tile, even though the tile may be fully covered with thin set, you can still have a hollow sound in that section of tile if you tap on it with something hard after installation. That doesn't necessarily mean that the tile is not stuck down well, but it does mean that there is an air pocket underneath the tile. Directional troweling helps to minimize that possibility. So I'll continue to use this method when it's convenient to do so. But the other side of the coin is sometimes people make things more complicated than they really are. Setting tile is one of those trades that most people who have some level of skill in working with their hands can do. In fact, the most questions and comments I get are from people who are taking on their own tile jobs. This happens much more often than questions coming from people about building cabinets or woodworking or other trades needing more technical kinds of skills. If people can figure out the layout of their tile and draw grid lines or parallel lines like I'm using in this case, all they're doing then is applying an appropriate amount of thin set to the floor or the wall and pressing tile into place. Once it sets up, the cement-based thin set does its job and the tile stays in place. When I get to the last cuts, it seems like it takes forever to get these few pieces in place. I prefer that the carpet edge has what's called a Z-bar on it, which allows it to be tucked into a bar at the edge of the doorway that's nailed to the slab. That gives a nice carpet edge to bury the tile cut into. In this case, the carpet is cut straight across, and although it's thick enough that I can still bury the edge into the carpet, I still have to take a little more time to get these cuts really precise. When it's all done, here's the appearance before grout is added. If you squint your eyes a little in looking at this ungrouted tile, you can get a sense of what dark grout would look like in this floor. The grout joints would stand out more and become prominent features in the look of the floor. I encourage people to go with grout colors that are more of a middle tone of the predominant color of the tile, which in this case would be a kind of light brown. This is what it looks like when that kind of grout is applied. As you can see, the grout joints are not quite as prominent as they were before, and they tend to sort of blend in with the tile, which allows the features of the tile to stand out more than the grout joints. With the floor tile installed and grouted, I can finish off the final tile work like covering the front of the tub. I went kind of light on thin set on pieces in this area because I cut in about a 2-foot access panel in the event we ever need to get to the tub spout water supply lines. That way we can hopefully pop the tile loose and get the panel open without doing too much damage. The bright white pieces you see on the tub deck and shower step are cut from quartz countertop material. They are extremely durable and are a nice contrast from the look of just the tile alone. The shower door will be clear tempered glass and will be frameless. The door will swing from the wall where the faucet and shower head are located, and the rest of the shower enclosure will mount on the tub deck and be installed around the edge of the deck to rest on the shower step as well. I'll include some footage of the shower door in a later summary video of this bathroom remodel. The final work to be done on this job is the vanity, which is a custom designed unit by the homeowner that I'm building. Check out the links to that video to the right and also another video you'll find interesting. I'd love to have you subscribe to my channel and hear your comments below as well. Thanks for watching.